Hi guys, it's Sophie. So I am going to have a chat with you about some books that sort of remind me of autumn. And the reason I'm doing this is linked to Mercedes' autumn readathon, and I really wanted to take part, and I actually went through ITVR like 3 or 4 times, like there's got to be something in here, but I couldn't meet the prompts. So I'm not going to go and do that readathon, just because, as I've said before, I'm trying not to spend too much money on books, and it would have meant I had to either reread or buy new books, and I'm also trying to read through the books I have. So it just didn't fit with me at that moment, but I really wanted to like share some autumn book love and ones I was thinking of in my head of like books I've already read. So these books all do have a theme. For me, what reminds me of autumn most is stories that are really close to nature. So these are all books that are like have that sort of noticing of nature, or that sort of kind of closeness with nature, or like a sense of slowness, I suppose. I think that's what autumn feels like in my head, and I've also chosen quite a few that are quite dark or have like a dark undertone, because that's another one that kind of me and autumn, they're associated somehow in my head. So I just thought I'd go through. It's quite a big pile, but hopefully you find something you might be interested in this year. So the first one I have to share is A Whole Life by Seethaler. This is a really quite short novella, I would probably call it, and it's probably like 120 pages long, 140 pages long, but the text is really big and it's quite a quick read. And this follows just like one man living his life, his whole life in this place. I loved it. I don't know why I haven't got to his next book yet, which I think is called The Tobacconist, because it just had that sense of slowness and like connection with nature, and it's just a really beautifully told little story. And whilst I don't really talk about this one much, I read it for I think the International a while ago, Man Booker International. I do remember it quite a lot, and I just wanted to kind of prod you guys to give it a shot if that is something you're into. And the next one's on quite a similar vein. I know some people have mixed thoughts on this one, but I actually really liked it, and that is The Unseen by Roy Jacobsen. This is a Norwegian novel that again was picked up for the Man Booker International. This book is around a family who live on an island that's separated from the rest of Norway, and they have their own little world. It really is like a little world on this island, and the outside doesn't really play into their world, but as kind of modernity kind of pushes on the edges of their world, they start to adapt. But this is told over multiple generations, and normally that doesn't like tick my box, that normally unticks a box for me, but it works really well because it gives you such a sense of the slowness of pace in this book, and I think that's what some people didn't like, is that it feels very slow, but I think it's also very real. This family spend like 3 lives building a dock, building something to like reach out to people, and the slowness of that, like the idea, the gathering, the doing, it just makes you reflect very closely on the changes you see around you in your life, and what is fast and what is slow. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it has a very strange and somewhat tumultuous family, but very close family dynamic in it. I would definitely recommend that one. The next one I have is a recent one that I read, and I know this has been around BookTube quite a lot, but I do think it fits into this pile, and that is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. This is the story of a family who go to live in a almost like reenactment of what kind of like Stone Age, Iron Age Britain would have looked like, and they live in these little huts and are supposed to be doing everything as though they have no access to the outside world at all. This one is one that has like a very creepy theme woven through it as well, though it shares that closeness to nature, and it shares that kind of difference between people who have that closeness, people who don't even think of it as a thing. It's kind of like almost an inconvenience. I really liked it. I enjoyed this one much more than I did The Tidal Zone. The next one I have is one that's very close to my heart, and that is Beast by Kingsnorth. This is the story of a man who, for reasons that we don't really know or investigate, ups and leaves everyone in his life and goes to live on Exmoor. And I know Exmoor quite intimately now, because that's where my boyfriend lives, and I knew it somewhat before then because it's very close to where I live. And the joy of this book is that the man is alone, kind of barely surviving. He cuts himself off from people as well. There's much more people than there are in this imagining of Exmoor. and he is convinced that the beast of Exmoor is there, and he tries to seek it out. It's a really beautifully written allegory for what he's searching and what he's afraid of, and his isolation. I think quite a few of these have to do with some form of isolation. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the ones I would recommend the most highly. It's just very clever and very dark, and you really settle into the story. It's written beautifully. It's like very sparse writing, which I think I do quite like sometimes. There's not really that poeticism that I like as well, but it is like very clean and clear, and I think that's what this needs. Yeah, again, these are ones I haven't spoken about all that much, so it's good to like revisit. And the next one I have is another one with like a dark theme to it, and that is Our Endless Numbered Days by Clare Fuller. This surrounds a young female protagonist who is living in a hut which is completely isolated from the outside world. She lives with her father, I think she calls Papa, and she believes that the world outside the hut has kind of vanished, and it's whether or not it has. This one is very dark, but I liked what it did, and I really like, again, the isolation, the closeness to nature, that kind of stillness but with threat that I feel like autumn brings. The next one I have is a slightly different kind of setting, and that is the Illiac Crest, and this one is by Christina, Rivera, Garcia. I think this is Mexican. Yeah, so the authors lived in Mexico and the US, and this book follows a man who is assaulted by the powers of women and femininity, sort of by their existence and their quietness and their otherness. He works at a hospital that is on the very edge of a cliff, and lives in a tiny little cottage, and he sort of has these women come into his life and upturn it and plot against him, and it's really good. I think I enjoyed it less when I read it than I thought I would, and I think it's just because I read it at the wrong time, but the actual story and what it does, bits of it have stayed with me, so I would recommend this one. Next one you've seen me speak about quite recently, that is the Overstory by Richard Powers. This is a story about trees. I've said this before, but it is less isolated. There's far more characters in this one, and they interact, and you get quite a lot of human story in this story. But I picked this one because I couldn't not, just because of that real interaction with and like engagement with nature. Again, very autumny to me. The next is one that I had sort of mixed feelings on reading, but I do think fits into this camp, and that's the Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. Now, lots and lots of people have really loved this, so I don't feel bad to recommend it, even though I had like a 3-star experience, I would say, with the Essex Serpent. This follows a woman scientist who is sort of tracking down the Essex Serpent in this lonely little village, thus the isolation, and is kind of interacting with the people who live there, and thinking about her life back in London and her life here in this strange, unfamiliar place. Next one I have is The Good People by Hannah Kent. This is one that I read for my In Real Life book club, and it's probably our most successful read so far, I would say. This follows a community in Ireland. I can't remember when it's supposed to be set. 1825, and normally like that kind of historical fiction doesn't really float my boat, but this is written just so closely and so well observed. Like, you do almost feel as though she's been there. It's a very strange sense, and this book is about a young boy who's born into this little village who isn't quite right, and they become convinced that he is a changeling, or a child that's been taken by the fairies and replaced by something other. This has definitely got the isolation, this has definitely got the closeness to nature. I think this is one of the best ones for the interaction between nature and like reason, I think, even though the two aren't necessarily like exclusive. I think often that kind of creepy sense of nature that you can get when you are like isolated and apart from other people, against that sort of quite heavy-handed approach of don't be so silly, nothing's out there, which sometimes only kind of multiplies the creepy factor. Yeah, so that's a historical fiction one. The next one I have, I'm pretty sure I read either last autumn or the autumn before, and that is The Sunlight Pilgrims by Jenni Fagan. The cover is very autumnal though. Though I think this is really it feels more wintry, but the autumn feel is there for me with the kind of coziness. This is about family who are up in Scotland, or heading up to Scotland, who are living in a caravan, and it is a mother, a man and her transgender child, and they're just living in this experience, and it's not quite like them against the elements, but it's kind of them with the elements, and again that kind of close feel, that kind of like essential feel that you get when the world like closes in around you. The world has frozen over in this novel, so they are completely stuck where they are, and everyone is fighting to survive. But that feel again kind of reminds me of that approach to colder weather, and again that kind of weird threat feeling, which is why I feel like a lot of these books are dark and also set in nature. I feel as though there's something quite, there's a dark edge to autumn and definitely to seasons changing as well. And then the last one I have is Heroes of the Frontier by Dave Eggers. I really enjoyed this book. I'm probably due a reread at some stage soon. This is a kind of family saga road trip, I suppose. It's about a woman who wants to escape her normal life and sort of travels up, I think it's to Alaska, and goes on this massive road trip, like to what she sees as like completely the middle of nowhere, and is trying to like reassess herself as she goes, and is kind of taking along all of these people with her. It's amusing and kind of light commentary on life, I would say. This is one of the lighter reads that I've recommended, but I really enjoyed it. Dave Eggers is really easy to read, and I feel like he can pack quite a bit of a punch sometimes. So yeah, that's the last one I have to recommend for you guys today. It's a little pile, so hopefully there's something in there that kind of strikes you. I find that like category of book, like dark, close to nature, isolation, ticks quite a few boxes for me, so I am kind of quite excited to share these books with you. Yeah, let me know how you're doing in general. Are you joining in on the autumn readathon if you are? I'm a bit jealous, but I hope you have a great time, and I'll see you guys again soon for another video. Bye bye.